My parents had gone out of town for the weekend, leaving me home alone. As an only child, this felt like a rare moment of freedom. Naturally, I decided to throw a party. At first, it was just friends, people I knew, people I trusted. But as the night went on, it grew beyond anything I'd planned. Friends brought friends, and then strangers showed up too. By the peak of it, there had to be close to 100 people total, packed inside the house and spilling out into the backyard. The house itself wasn't huge, but it had a decent-sized yard, which helped keep things from feeling completely chaotic. Music was loud, drinks were flowing, laughter everywhere. Somehow, even with the noise, nothing felt out of control. No fights, no damage, no angry neighbors knocking on the door. I remember feeling oddly proud of myself, like I'd pulled off something risky and succeeded. As the night faded, people began to leave. Some friends crashed on the couch, others headed home. Eventually, I decided to call it a night. Still a little drunk, I climbed the stairs to my room and collapsed into bed. That's when I heard it, a door opening, then closing. It came from somewhere downstairs. Half asleep, I assumed it was just someone staying over, maybe grabbing water or using the bathroom. I rolled onto my side and tried to drift off again. I don't know how long I slept, but I woke up suddenly with that unmistakable feeling that something wasn't right. The room was pitch black. I checked my phone for As I set it down, I heard a faint rattling noise from downstairs, something metallic, like a cup falling, or being set down too hard. Then footsteps. Slow, careful. Again, I told myself it was nothing. People were still in the house. No reason to panic. But the footsteps didn't stop. They moved deliberately, back and forth. Then I heard them on the stairs. That's when confusion turned into fear. The upstairs had been off limits during the party. Everyone knew that. No one had any reason to be up here. The footsteps reached the hallway. My door handle moved. My heart slammed against my ribs. I tried to laugh it off. Tried to sound annoyed instead of terrified. Dude, not cool. The door kept opening. A figure stood in the doorway. Tall, broad, completely unfamiliar. I didn't recognize him at all. He was much older than anyone at the party, easily in his 50s. His face was partially lit by moonlight, and that's when I saw it. A flash of metal, a knife, one from our kitchen. He didn't step into the room. He didn't speak. He just stood there. I stayed completely still, terrified that if I moved, I'd draw his attention. I wasn't even sure he could see me in the darkness, and I didn't want to find out. Then, suddenly, everything exploded into motion. The front door burst open. Heavy footsteps thundered through the house. Voices shouted commands. Blue and red lights flooded the hallway. Police? The man bolted, but he didn't get far. They tackled him halfway down the stairs. It turned out one of my friends, asleep on the couch, had woken up and seen the intruder wandering downstairs. He called the police immediately. That call probably saved my life. The house in the woods? Years later, I lived alone in a small single-story house far outside the city. 5 acres of land, trees on all sides. My nearest neighbor was miles away. It was quiet, isolated, exactly what I'd wanted, at least at first. I'd been there less than a year, still new to the area, still settling in. One Thursday evening, I came home from work and immediately felt something was off. The house was cold, and naturally cold for summer. As I walked through the kitchen, I noticed a window at the back of the house standing wide open. The screen was intact, but the latch wouldn't close. I was certain I hadn't left it that way. I forced it shut and jammed a screw into the frame as a temporary fix. I told myself it must have blown open in the wind. The next night, while brushing my teeth, I glanced out the window and froze. At the edge of the woods stood a dark figure, just standing there, watching. By the time I cleaned the toothpaste from my mouth and looked again, he was gone. I called the police anyway. They found nothing. The next day, my neighbor Lyle came by. One look at the window and his expression changed. The latch hadn't broken accidentally, had been pried open. Tool marks are still visible. That night, I slept with my firearm beside my bed. At 3 a.m., I woke up freezing. The window was open again. The latch destroyed. The screen gone. Someone had been inside my house while I slept. Nothing was stolen. Nothing disturbed. That was the worst part. To this day, I don't know what he wanted. But I know one thing for sure. Being alone doesn't mean being safe. I was 19 when this happened. It was the year after I finished high school, and I was still trying to figure out where my life was headed. During the day, I worked full-time at a small mechanical garage on the edge of town, mostly doing oil changes and basic repairs. At night, I kept going back and forth in my head, college applications on one side, military brochures on the other. At that time, I was still living with my parents. We lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind where every house looked similar and nothing ever really happened. Our place was a 2-story, 4-bedroom home, and most of my friends lived within walking distance. One of my closest friends, Ethan, lived just a few houses away. One Saturday afternoon, my parents left for a short vacation. As soon as their car disappeared down the street, the house felt different, bigger, quieter, almost unfamiliar. I texted Ethan and invited him over to hang out. No party plans, no drinking, just movies and killing time. When he arrived, we decided to use the living room. My dad was obsessed with movies, so the setup downstairs was intense. Surround sound speakers in every corner, acoustic panels on the walls, and heavy blackout curtains that sealed off every bit of outside light. Once we turned everything off, the room felt like a private theater. We were halfway through a movie when the doorbell rang. I checked my phone. It was around 9:40 p.m. I paused the movie and looked at Ethan. "Did you invite anyone?" I asked. He shook his head immediately. That alone felt strange. Anyone we knew would have texted instead of ringing the bell. No one ever just showed up unannounced. We stayed quiet for a moment, listening. The doorbell didn't ring again. Curiosity got the better of me. I stood up and slowly walked toward the front of the house, keeping all the lights off. I carefully peeked through the side window near the door. By the time I looked out, I saw a man walking away down the street. I only saw him from behind, but he was definitely not our age. His posture was stiff, his steps slow and deliberate. It was too dark to tell if he got into a car or kept walking. I remember feeling confused, but not scared. At least not yet. I went back to the living room, brushed it off, and we finished the movie. After that, we watched a couple of shows and talked about random stuff. Around midnight, Ethan decided to head home. That's when the house really felt empty. I locked the door behind him and stood there for a second, listening to the silence. I wasn't tired yet, so I went upstairs to my room and turned on my console. None of my friends were online, so I played a few matches with random players. Time passed faster than I realized. Then something outside caught my attention. A bright light suddenly flooded through my window. It was one of the exterior security lights on the side of the house, motion activated. I turned my head toward the window, just as I heard a sharp pop. The light instantly went dark. My stomach dropped. I got up and carefully pulled the curtain back, just enough to look outside. The window overlooked the gravel driveway beside the house. That's when I saw it. A large, dark-colored van was parked there, engine off. No headlights. No one visible inside or around it. Every instinct in my body screamed that something was wrong. I shut the curtain immediately. My hands were shaking as I dragged my dresser in front of my bedroom door. Then I grabbed my phone and started dialing the police. Before I could even finish explaining, I heard a loud crack from downstairs. It sounded like thick wood snapping in half. Then the front door creaked open. I told the dispatcher they were already inside. As I stayed on the line, I heard footsteps, at least 2 people moving through the first floor. Drawers opening, doors closing. Slow, methodical movement. I sat on the edge of my bed, barely breathing, my heart pounding so hard I was sure they could hear it. Minutes felt like hours. Then came the sound I was dreading. Footsteps on the stairs. They went into one of the spare bedrooms first. Then my parents' room. I realized that bought me a little more time, but I also knew it was only a matter of seconds before they reached mine. I kept wondering where the police were. The nearest station wasn't close. Every second felt unbearable. Then chaos. Sirens, shouting. Heavy boots pounding through the house. I heard the intruders panic, running, crashing into things. If I hadn't been so terrified, I might have felt some relief. Instead, I stayed frozen, still hidden behind my dresser. Eventually, an officer knocked on my door and announced himself. I moved the dresser and opened it slowly, hands still shaking. They took my statement and explained what had happened. The loud crack I heard earlier was a bolt tool they used to break my front door lock. The intruders were arrested. The officers called my parents and told me I couldn't stay there alone. The door was destroyed, and the house wasn't secure. I spent the rest of the night at Ethan's place, wide awake, replaying every sound in my head. That night changed how safe I felt in my own home, and I never ignored a doorbell again.